The purpose of this video is to review over the anatomy of the human heart. As we begin, we'll begin with the external structures of the heart. The human heart has 4 chambers. The upper chambers are the atria. Now on the outside of the heart, these are called auricles. The lower chambers are the ventricles. Now do remember that when you are looking at a model, you're looking at the model's right and left and not your own. So this right here would be our left auricle, this would be our right auricle, this would be our left ventricle, and our right ventricle. On the model, the blood vessels are color-coded to represent the arteries and veins. The reds here will be the arteries, the blue will be the veins. So we have coronary arteries and veins running across the surface of the heart. Now as we continue, before we move to the internal structures of the heart, we want you to be aware of the blood vessels associated with the heart. And as we begin, this large structure right here is the largest blood vessel of the heart. It's called the aorta. Now the aorta has 3 branches off of it. The first branch right here is the Brachiocephalic Artery. Right over here we have our left common carotid artery, and it moves up to the side of the neck. And then moving across and over to here, continuing to the arm, we have our left subclavian artery. Moving back over to our brachiocephalic artery, the brachiocephalic goes from here to here. Now anytime we see a branching of a blood vessel or we see it changing locations in the body, we will have a name change. Therefore, at this branching, it is no longer the brachiocephalic. It becomes the right common carotid, and then right across here it becomes the right subclavian. Now moving back over to the blue here, this is the largest vein of the body, that is the superior vena cava. Above the heart it is the superior vena cava. Below the heart, continuing right there you can see it, it is the inferior vena cava. So the superior vena cava branches right in this area. We have the right brachiocephalic vein right here. We have the left brachiocephalic vein. So do notice that we have 1 brachiocephalic artery, we have 2 brachiocephalic veins. Now both of the brachiocephalics branch. The internal branch moving up to the side of the neck will be our right and left jugular veins, and the external structures right here and here will be the right and left subclavian veins. So we do have subclavian arteries and veins, and we do have right and left subclavian arteries and veins. Therefore, it is very important to include artery, vein, left, and right as you're going through the model. Now, as we continue, I want to remove the covering of the heart and show you the internal structures. Now, as we look at the internal section of the heart, first thing we want to do is let's review over the chambers of the heart. This upper chamber right in here will be our right aorta, and right atrium. Right over here we'll have our left atrium. Below we will have our left ventricle and our right ventricle. Now the wall between the ventricles is called the interventricular septum, and it literally means wall between the ventricles. And as we're looking at the heart, the way one can tell the right from the left is to look at the thickness of the heart. Now on the heart wall, the internal structure is the endocardium. This muscular structure is the myocardium, and it's this myocardial wall that we're looking at. The left myocardial wall is twice as thick as the right. And the reason for this is because the left side pumps to all sections of the body with exception to the lungs. The external part of the heart, the thin layer on the outside, right along in that area, that would be the epicardium. Now as we continue, we have 4 valves of the heart. Now as we move from our right atrium to our right ventricle, we have a valve, and that's represented right here. That is the tricuspid, so tri-right. The strings that are attached are called the chordae tendineae. The chordae tendineae pull the valve shut. They are attached to muscles called the papillary muscles. Now the grooves that you see within the heart and the uneven surface is called the trabeculae carneae. Moving over to the left side of the heart, between the left atrium and the left ventricle, we have the mitral valve. In older books, it's also called the bicuspid valve. And they receive their names because this one has 2 cusps, while this one has 3. This is the most commonly replaced valve. The strings, again, are chordae tendineae. The muscle is called the papillary muscle. The other valves that we have of the heart is that right here, leading out of the body, we have our pulmonary semilunar valve, and that goes from the right ventricle up and out through the body. And then right here, coming back into the heart, we have our aortic semilunar valve. Now I do want you to look at this for just a second, and I want you to learn a poem. Arteries are red, veins are blue, except in pulmonary, the reverse is true. And this has to do with the level of oxygen that is represented in the blood vessels. Arteries are oxygen rich, therefore they're bright red. Veins are oxygen poor, therefore they're blue. However, with the circulation going from the heart to the blood vessel to the lungs, we have our pulmonary arteries that have not picked up oxygen, so they will be oxygen poor. Our pulmonary veins are returning from the lungs, therefore they are oxygen rich. And so within the lungs, we will see a reverse in colors representing the layer of oxygen. So the red will be our pulmonary veins, and the blue will be our pulmonary arteries. As we continue to look at the heart, a few additional structures that we would like for you to notice is, if we put this back on, when you study the models of the heart, the key areas that I want you to pay attention to is going to be these blood vessels. Now, the blood vessels will be the challenge for the heart, and what you need to be aware of is that each model will show a different level of description or different amounts of detail on the blood vessels leaving the heart. So let's review over 3 different models and see what level of detail is shown on each. Now, each of these models that we are reviewing over shows all the details of the heart. However, the difference is going to be in how much detail is shown with regard to the blood vessels. So on this model right here, we see the aorta, we see the pulmonary trunk, and we see the superior vena cava. No branching is shown. However, we'll remove this right here. We can still see all the internal structures we previously reviewed over. So we can see our 4 chambers, we can see our interventricular septum. And then if we look over at this side, we can see that our pulmonary arteries are going to be blue and our pulmonary veins will be red. If we move over to this model, much more detail is given. Now on this particular one, our pulmonary trunk, which would be an artery, is purple, and again that's showing you that change in oxygen level, while our pulmonary veins are still represented as being red. With regards to the blood vessels associated with the heart, we can see our superior vena cava, we can see our 2 brachiocephalic veins, we can see the right here and right there as our 2 subclavian veins. We can see right here and right there our 2 jugular veins. We can see the 3 branches, 1, 2, 3, coming off of the aorta. This first branch being the Brachiocephalic Artery. our our left jugular, try this again, our left carotid artery, and moving over there we have our left subclavian artery. And then our brachiocephalic on this will branch to make the right carotid artery and the right subclavian artery. Both models, if we look at them, and we flip it over, will show the, there we go, right there, they will show our inferior vena cava. Moving over to this model right here. Again, this model is showing us the pulmonary trunk in purple. It is showing us the aorta, and it's showing us the superior vena cava. On this one, it only shows us the brachiocephalics branching off of the superior vena cava. It shows us the stomp of our 3 extensions off of the aorta. So right here we have our brachiocephalic artery, our left common carotid artery, and our left subclavian artery. This model does show us the aortic arch, and as we turn around, we can see that when it straightens out, right in here, it becomes the thoracic aorta. Now it remains thoracic aorta. We're going to move right back over here until it passes this diaphragm area, at which time it passes the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. So again, our blood vessels are based on location and branching. Additional structures that will be present would be seen on this model right here. And I want you to notice that little white structure. That little white structure that we're seeing right there is called the Ligamentum Arteriosum, and that is a remnant of the ductus arteriosa, or an embryonic bypass unit that allows for the heart to develop and the blood to continue to circulate in a developing embryo. And so that is a fetal adjustment. Now you do need to spend time reviewing over each of these models and the anatomy, but pay specific attention to the blood vessels associated around the heart and which model shows what level of detail. So I look forward to seeing you in the lab studying the models, and if you have any questions, please stop by and ask for help.